He was the mastermind behind one of America's greatest musical revolutions. Yet he spent years locked away, not by prison walls, but by the prison of his own mind. While millions sang his songs, he was battling demons no one could see. This is not just the story of Brian Wilson, the genius behind the Beach Boys. This is a story of brilliance breakdown and the breathtaking strength it takes to rise again when your mind becomes your worst enemy. The 1960s were an explosion of color culture and change, and at the center of it, riding the crest of California's golden wave, was the Beach Boys, with their iconic harmonies and sunny surf songs. But behind the music, behind the smiling album covers, was a man tormented by a storm. He couldn't escape. Brian Wilson was no ordinary artist. While others followed trends, he created them. At just 23, he composed the revolutionary album Pet Sounds, a record that even the Beatles called a masterpiece. But while the world praised his genius, Brian was quietly falling apart. He heard voices, real, terrifying voices. He struggled to distinguish reality from illusion, and as the world celebrated him, he vanished from public life, slipping into decades of darkness. Brian was born in 1942 in Hawthorne, California. From a young age, music came naturally to him, but so did pain. His father, Murray Wilson, was a harsh disciplinarian, violent and cold. The emotional scars shaped Brian in ways no one could fully understand. As he formed the Beach Boys with his brothers and cousin, success came fast, but with fame came pressure. Brian's sensitive soul began to crack. In 1964, at the peak of their fame, he suffered a panic attack on a flight and quit touring. While the band toured, Brian stayed home, pouring his soul into music. It was during this time he created Pet Sounds, using innovative recording techniques, orchestral arrangements, and deeply personal lyrics. Brian redefined pop music, but the pressure to outdo himself combined with experimentation with LSD and other drugs sent him spiraling. Brian was hearing voices that weren't there, seeing things no one else could. He withdrew from life, often staying in bed for days, gaining weight, refusing to bathe, barely speaking. He would stare into space, lost in an internal battle no one could see. Friends and family watched helplessly as Brian disappeared into the fog of mental illness. Doctors diagnosed him with schizoaffective disorder, a condition combining symptoms of schizophrenia and mood disorders. For over a decade, Brian lived like a ghost in his own home. He was manipulated by an unethical therapist, Dr. Eugene Landy, who took control of Brian's finances, relationships, and career. Landy's 24-hour therapy pushed Brian even further into dependence and confusion. But the story doesn't end in tragedy. In the early 1990s, Brian's family fought back. They took Landy to court and freed Brian from his grip. Slowly, Brian began to heal. With the support of friends, new love, and medication, he returned to music tentatively at first, then boldly. In 2004, decades after creating Pet Sounds, Brian finally released his long-lost masterpiece, Smile, an album he had abandoned during his breakdown. It was a moment of poetic triumph. The world finally heard what had been trapped inside him for so long. In later years, Brian began touring again. Audiences, many in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, watched with tears in their eyes as the man they had thought was lost forever stood on stage singing songs that had defined their youth. Brian's voice was softer now, his body slower, but his spirit had never been stronger. How do you survive when your mind betrays you? How do you keep going when the very thing that makes you brilliant also brings you pain? Brian Wilson never gave up. He faced voices in his head louder than applause. He battled loneliness in the midst of fame. He lost years to silence but gained decades of legacy. Today, Brian Wilson is not just remembered as a music icon. He is admired as a symbol of resilience, creativity, and courage. He showed the world that mental illness doesn't define you, it challenges you, and sometimes the strongest people are those who fought battles no one else can see. If Brian Wilson's story moved you, if it reminded you that even in darkness there is light, then don't let it end here. Subscribe to our channel for more true stories of triumph over adversity. Share this video with someone who needs hope, and most of all, remember, no matter your age, your pain, or your past, it's never too late to fight back, to heal, and to sing again. Because like Brian Wilson, you too have a song inside you, waiting to be heard.